So it's 7 p.m. and it looks like all of the commissioners that are going to be here are here. Yang Ye said that he won't be here. The only thing I'm wondering about is I see James Allen. Is he part of staff that we don't know? Okay.
No, I saw the announcement for the meeting about the status of the dog parks. And since I'm a dog owner and go to Mckinsey Park all the time, I wanted to know what was going on.
Great, glad you're here. Thanks for letting us know. Okay, so 7 p.m. we're all here. Let's get started. So I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay,
So Casey,
I will take the roll and then we can do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, great.
Chair Morris,
Here.
Vice Chair Corrigan,
Here.
Commissioner Valadez,
Here.
Commissioner Wang,
Here.
Commissioner Daly,
Here.
and Commissioner Ye is absent. So we do have a quorum of 5.
Great, thank you. Yes, so next is Pledge Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect, thank you. Public comments? I think that's where we go next, and I'm wondering if there are any. If you see anybody with hands up or present?
Is there public comments for items not on the agenda?
Yes,
That's
I'm sorry,
correct.
for items not on the agenda, sorry, yes.
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay,
I think we can move on.
great. So moving on, I'll take us to items for consideration and action. Great. First, go ahead, Casey, sorry.
Nope, I was just nodding. You're correct. So
Oh,
the
okay.
first is-
First is the minutes from our July 13th, 2022 meeting. If we can approve them or let Casey know if there are any concerns about them. Yes, Janine. You're on mute.
A minor edit, but since we were indicating what a member of the public said, we want to get it right. The very last commenter under the pickleball comments, Los Altos community member Chris thanked the city and the pickleball community for cooperation on behalf of the tennis community. He advocated for a racket sports subcommittee. That's it.
I can make that adjustment.
With that adjustment, I would move to approve unless somebody else has an issue.
Any other commissioners have any comments? Okay, then we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete, I didn't see you. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Morris. My question is, why are we capturing comments and not doing action minutes?
So we are moving toward action minutes. So that's been our direction from the city clerk's office. This was a commission that previously asked to have 1 to 2 sentences about each commenter. That was probably in 2019. And so we originally moved in that direction. And since then have been moving more and more toward action minutes. And so we are keeping them to either that a commenter supported or opposed something. But occasionally there is something that falls outside of the range of just supporting or opposing.
Great, thanks for the clarification, Casey. So with that, any other questions, concerns about the minutes, corrections?
We just need a second.
We just need a second, right? Anyone want to second the motion to approve the minutes with the correction that Janine, Commissioner Valadez submitted?
I move to second.
Commissioner Wang, thank you.
Okay. Chair Morris,
Yes.
Vice Chair Corrigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Valadez,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
and Commissioner Daly.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, next will be the dog pilot, if I can speak English, it'll be the dog park pilot update that I believe Director Hernandez will lead.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you,
great, thank you.
Chair Morris. And everybody can hear me clearly, right? Sorry, I had something in my throat there for a second. Got some water there. I think I'm doing all right. Wanted to give an update on the dog park pilot programs that we've got going on. And the report that I provided is in your packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. If not, I know it was submitted this week. But so just to give some background on this item, the week of June 27th of 2022, the city opened up two new fenced off-leash dog parks, one at Mckinsey and one at Hillview Parks. With that, the Hillview Dog Park currently is located on the east side of the soccer field and is considered a temporary site. We'll be working towards this commission actually will be taking a big role in working on getting some input for the permanent site. The permanent site will be eventually put on the northwest side of the soccer field in the same park at Hillview. So that will be a bigger project, and we'll have more discussion on that in the future. But the current site that's there is considered temporary at this time. The Mckinsey Dog Park is considered a pilot program. We need to do some evaluation of that program. It's located next to the tennis courts in the front side, and we call it the front towards Fremont of Mckinsey. There's two areas of Mckinsey that's split by the corporation yard known as MSC. So that's more towards the Fremont side by the expressway, and that right now is considered a pilot. There's a 5-foot fence there, and we'll be looking at evaluating both of these as promised to council when we took these sites into consideration to build. We'll be evaluating both programs, one of them obviously or actually both of them to improve the programs and keep it going for the time of the pilot at Mckinsey and the temporary site at Hillview, but also to gain some better knowledge of what the public needs are for a dog park at Hillview and at Mckinsey. And now at Mckinsey, being that it's a pilot program, I think it's still under consideration of its location. So the viability of that program will need to be reviewed as well. So after internal considerations within the staff of Parks and Recreation, suggestions were derived from public meetings and the Parks and Rec Department staff itself. We gathered several evaluation points to consider for both facilities. So I'll read off of the list that we currently have put together. And this list, I wanted to include it in this report to the commission. I think it's a jumping off point. And it's part of that is because they're obvious evaluation points, as well as this is something that we've been telling the public the minimum will be done to evaluate. So with that, I have actually, I think I added an 8th one, sorry. So the 8 points I have is tracking things like the parking, tracking the utilization of the park. That would include people, dogs, everything like that. We need to track the incidents over a period of time at the sites, such as dog fighting, dog bites, calls for service from PD and animal control, noise reports from the nearby offices and park users and residents, issues with cleanup, issues with, feedback from park users, actual feedback, firsthand reports from the people out there, and maybe even a questionnaire, and then also feedback via email comments that we've been receiving since even before the park opened. So now it's definitely time to consider how we're going to track this. And so with that, the Parks and Rec Commission, I think, should discuss any additional evaluation points to add to this list, as well as the involvement of the Parks and Rec Commission on the items that I've just recited, as well as the things that we may add to this, and how the Parks and Rec Commission can help us get the information, of these items to basically to incorporate into the evaluation process, as well as the evaluation period too. So That's all I wanted to do with this report. So now I think, Chair, if you want to start the discussion after a question, I can answer any questions on this right now.
That's great. Yes, so do any of the commissioners have any questions? And let's get started on the discussion. Absolutely. Well, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Valadez.
A quick question, in terms of how you classified each of the parks, Hillview being the site, meaning Hillview will be a permanent site, but the location, the current one is temporary. And then you identified the northwest area near the library as permanent. And then Mckinsey as an all around pilot. Back to Hillview, do you expect that you will have to run a pilot at the new site once you've cleared out the area? Or are we going full commitment to that as the permanent site from construction?
Being that's a very good question, because yeah, I had trouble trying to tackle both of those classifications, but that's really what we fell upon once these dog parks came into place. So being the permanent site itself, being that it's already budgeted for planning purposes, and there is a budget, a line item that council has put approved in the CIP program. Yeah, I don't believe that there's any evaluation for its viability. However, the evaluation process should be used to make sure that we put a product that's desired for the community dog users, as well as the community that surrounds that area. So yeah, I would consider it already moving forward, because we have the budget to start this process.
May I add a counterpoint or a counter position or suggestion? I understand that there is a budget line item, and that is a really good thing. I'm very much happy, very happy about that. But does it specify, does it have to absolutely be at that location? Could it not be applied? For example, should the experience, I'm sorry, let me restate. Should an approach be used such that the new site, the Northwest site, is piloted and evaluated, and the results of that, let's say, are much worse than whatever data we gathered on the east side, the east location? Could not the budget then be applied to the east side location for permanency, or is somehow a budget tied to specific, the specific location as specified in the north?
No, I can say with confidence that no, it's not tied to the actual location, whether it's yards away or the site that it currently is right now. But as the plan sits, we have told the residents in that area that the current location is temporary. So unless and there could be a left turn on that once this goes to council, and once it's evaluated, and any kind of recommendation that's taken to council for the location. But a lot of research has gone into its permanent location that we're planning for. So that is definitely not on the horizon, but I can't say that it couldn't happen. So.
All right, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from commissioners? It looks like Commissioner Wang has one.
The only other consideration here that I would add is just a budgetary one. You guys had mentioned there's a line item budget for having these dog parks, and just to measure if the maintenance and the caretaking costs are sort of in line with what you guys had budgeted.
Yes, and that's an evaluation. That's definitely another point of evaluation that will be taken into consideration. Yeah. So like I said, it's not an exhaustive list, the 8, and you just reminded me of one that I had mentioned before, but didn't put on this list. But yeah, budgetary and how the maintenance costs, and we can go on, which I'm sure we'll discuss.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions? Well, it looks like maybe Commissioner Valadez, you do.
I wasn't going to ask again until everybody asked their questions, but if everybody's done, I'm ready for a second round. In your plan, design plan, have you identified a surface yet, or are you still open on that? Is that a consideration as part of the evaluation process?
Yes, that is probably one of the biggest evaluation process items we need to discuss. So once that process, and once again, these are two separate things. We're just talking about the evaluation process, and then when the discussion starts for the permanent site, that is going to be something, a major topic, I think, of the new site.
Okay, and finally, I would suggest on the list of considerations is, sir, you had mentioned a survey, although the context was more about just general feedback, but I'm particularly interested in a survey question or two that offers the public the opportunity to give us feedback about feature additions to the park. And what I mean by features, it could be as, literal things like ramps, platforms, jump bars, or it could be services like docent hours or training classes or etiquette classes for humans. Or it could be something even programmatic like rental of the park on occasion for dog-friendly parties where the dogs stay fenced in, but they can still, be around the humans. And things like that, just kind of an open-ended, maybe with a suggestion list based on other local parks around here, but a way for us to gather feedback from the public on whether they like those things or don't like those things or wouldn't want to spend money on that or would, et cetera.
Commissioner, just to clarify, was there a question in there or was that
No,
not?
I wanted to make a suggestion to add to your list.
Okay, yeah, and which I think we'll start the discussion on that. So thank you.
Perfect. Any other commissioners with a question? Okay, I actually do have a question myself, if I may. So I'm wondering if you could repeat the timeline, Director Hernandez, that you shared with us before, so that maybe we have a little clarity on this. So just to make sure, maybe we should have started with that. But I sort of remember there were phases, and that might help us as we move forward on our discussion tonight, because I believe tonight what we want to be focusing in on is this evaluation. So we want to kind of stay on that topic of how are we going to do this evaluation? What do we think needs to be in the evaluation? If I'm correct, is that right, Director Hernandez?
That is correct, and I think just to hopefully lead the discussion a little more. I think there are two, and I was trying to make a point of that in the brief report that I submitted. I think there's two different types of evaluations here, so I'll try to repeat that. The main evaluation, the viability of the dog park, will be at Mckinsey. Is it a good location for it? And we need to jot down all the things that it is and it isn't for there, and then come to a conclusion with the evaluation and statistics, whatever else, for council to make the final decision on continuing that program there, or to terminate that or look for another site. So that I think is definitely different than Hillview. The Hillview evaluation, I think, will kind of blend into, and the information that's gathered there would be used in the planning of the permanent dog park at that park. At Hillview. So I think we're talking about evaluating these two parks in conjunction with each other, but definitely looking for different information for them.
Right. So Hillview's done. It's a done deal. The pilot was done. All we're going to be working on is what's going to make it the best place it can, what's working, what's not working with what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. And then Mckinsey.
Yes.
Sorry.
I was going to say that's definitely the way I would consider it at this point. Yes.
Okay. So Mckinsey, it's about what's working, what's not working, in addition to location. So, and I just want to clarify, is it location within the park? You'll have to forgive me. I can't recall if it was approved. Absolutely. It's staying at Mckinsey, or if it's whether or not there's going to be one at Mckinsey, period.
Yeah, it definitely, I definitely wouldn't say the latter necessarily, but the former is definitely up in the air still. Is it going to work at that location in that park? And at this point, with our research into a park on the central to the south side of Los Altos, that really the research in locations really terminated at that location. So definitely it would have to be a whole other, I think it would be a whole other research project to find a different location. But so at this point, it would be localized to the location within the park, and which I think that where it is right now from the results of our investigations prior is really the only place at McKinsey at this time. So.
Okay, there are two other things that I think on the list that you have. But I think we'll bring that up in the discussion. So, okay, great. If there are no other questions for Director Hernandez, I say we move into the discussion, right?
We'll see if there's any questions from members of
Public
the public.
comment. Thank you. Yes, we'll do public comment before we start discussing. Great, thank you. And I've noticed a few other people have joined us, so.
Yeah, there are a couple. So if anyone from the public would like to speak on the dog park item, they could raise their hand now. It doesn't seem like they would like to speak, so perhaps they're just here for the update.
Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so if we have no public comments, then although it does look like Mr. Allen just unmuted himself. So Mr. Allen, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just had a question about how the Zoom meeting works. When you say raise your hand, I'm not getting an image of myself. So, and I didn't know how many people were actually going to attend. So I didn't know if we were going to take public comment or not.
We are right now. So if you'd like to have time to make a public comment about this, you're welcome to do that right now. And we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, just as
Okay.
I live about half a mile from the park, I've probably been to the park. Oh, what just happened?
We just put you on a timer.
Okay. Oh, okay, great. So I've probably been to the park, I would say 20 times since it opened. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. I was amazed at the speed with which the fence was installed. I don't know how long it took you to figure out how it was going to get put in, but the actual time to install was, it's like 1 week I was there walking by, nothing is there. The next week the fence is up and it's ready to go. So I thought that was great. I love the fact that there's water available and there are benches available inside, and that the climbing structure that was there, it has now gone. And as far as I can tell from the visits I've had, generally people who bring their dogs, the people are well behaved and the dogs are well behaved. So it's been a really positive experience. And I guess the only question I have is watering the grass. I mean, is the plan to continue watering the grass? Is that going to be the surface?
I'm afraid that we can't take questions
Oh, okay.
during
So-
public comment. So keep going and then we'll see if we can get you an answer to that.
Okay, so I think that's sort of my 2 cents, that I really like the park and my dog really likes the park and we go there a lot. So I want to see it. I absolutely want to see it continue.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Do any of the commissioners have a question for Mr. Allen? Don't see anybody having one, but I do. I'd like to clarify something, and perhaps Director Hernandez, you want to do something like that. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say for Mr. Allen's benefit, if he wants to just email me, my email's on the website, and he can ask me any questions about maintenance for anything.
Okay,
Facility.
great.
And my question is for Mr. Allen. I just wondered why you were wondering if the grass was going to continue to be watered, so we could understand that a little bit more.
Oh, because I see kind of dry spots. There's some areas where it's dry and some areas where it's wet, and there seems to be kind of uneven growth. And so I didn't know if you were just going to let it go because we're in a drought, and that's sort of, what should I be expecting in the future?
Okay, great. Thank you. So that helps quite a bit to get that input on
Okay.
what you're seeing. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Allen? No. Okay, great. Seeing none, then we'll move on. If there's any other public comment. Anybody? Doesn't look like it. Okay, great. So we'll close the public comment time and move to commissioner discussion. Anybody want to get us started? Oh, Commissioner Corrigan, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Morris.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Co-chair Corrigan. My apologies.
That is more than fine.
Okay.
The one question I had in the evaluation is there some way for us to measure any decline in off-leash activity in general around the city? Because I think one of the drivers for the fenced-in option was because we realized off-leash activity when we did the pilot at Hillview was pretty high. And I haven't, when I've sort of anecdotally looked around, I still see off-leash occurring in Los Altos. So I would expect to see a decline in activity, or, if you think about that, what's the benefit of doing this if we're having continuing off-leash activity that's not abating? So I'd like to find a way to measure that. Maybe even at Hillview itself, I've seen people with dogs in the Hillview baseball field at the same time as the fenced-in park. I've seen it on the soccer field too, which really surprised me, frankly. So I'd like to have a metric on that as part of this evaluation.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Daly, your hand is up.
To Commissioner Corrigan's point, I think that it would be relatively straightforward to just get enforcement data from Palo Alto Animal Control. How many calls have they responded to over time, and whatever data they can provide. Other than that, I don't think we're going to be able to measure off-leash activity. We'll have to use calls to animal control as a proxy.
Okay, and thank you, Commissioner Daly. And Commissioner Corrigan, your hand is up again.
Yeah, I just want to, just as a quick rejoinder to Commissioner Daly's comment, this is actually exactly what we did during the off-leash pilot, is we measured off-leash activity. So it's doable as long as somebody's swinging by at a regular frequency. In fact, animal control wasn't swinging by with the frequency we needed to measure this. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I would recommend that we, if we have people willing to volunteer to do some of that, I'm willing to do some of the volunteering, certainly.
Great. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Any other commissioners want to join in on the discussion? Commissioner Valdez, looks like your hand is kind of up and down.
I just want
Please.
I realize now that when I made my prior suggestion on surveys, it should have been in here. So Director Hernandez, to the extent that you may have heard what I said, I wanted to reiterate that I would like that as a suggested item in the evaluation. As far as the off-leash activity, I can relate something that was done in Palo Alto when I was doing my own research on how cities were being monitored, but it wasn't under the enforcement guise. It was under the evaluation charter, where they installed, and they actually did this for pickleball as well and tennis, but I'm talking about dog parks right now. They actually installed some temporary cameras at sites where they knew that there were very regular off-leash users, maybe even groups that met regularly. And so they set them up, and they basically had them on during daylight hours. They didn't have them on all night, and they just counted. Somebody, instead of volunteering to sit at the park, they volunteered to watch video and count. And they actually did this for their high usage areas. And I think in Palo Alto, it was something like 4 parks, 4 out of the will they have something like 8 or 10 parks? Four of the parks that they found there was high amount of off-leash activity. And I don't know what the legal implications of that are. I do not know if their city council passed an ordinance allowing that. I just know that occurred because I talked to several dog park users about that.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, Director Hernandez.
I just want to ask one question of Commissioner Valadez. Because yeah, I have all those questions that you just mentioned in my head about filming people without their consent. But if you and I can talk offline about this later, or once we finalize the evaluation process, who your contact would be for that. You said you've heard it from people over there. So at some point I would want to get the contact to find out how they accomplish that.
As I just said, my contacts were dog park users, not anybody from the city. So and the reason they knew was that even though they didn't seek permission from users, they kind of let everybody know that there was going to be an evaluation period, and they posted a sign saying, you know, we got some cameras on just to see how the parks are being used. And it was kind of an opt-in. If you went to the park, you opted in. So they didn't make anybody sign. But this was from users, not from anybody official, or no commissioner, no council member.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to weigh in? Okay, I have a few items that I think would be great to add in. One would be surface. How is the surface holding up? And getting feedback from people about what they think of the surface. So at Hillview, it's solely grass. At Mckinsey, there's asphalt, grass, dirt, and a pit of bark. What do you call it? Yeah, mulch, bark. And so it would be interesting to get feedback on that, because we have the multi-surface there. So that's one thing that I think would be great to add into it. The other is, I agree with Commissioner Corrigan, probably not surprisingly, because we were the team that was doing the evaluation of the pilot program, but it would be nice to do an assessment of how many dogs are off leash outside of the fenced in area. And I know I'm by Mckinsey typically 4 or 5 times a week myself, and I walk from the front to the back, and it would be good to tally what we're seeing there. And I have to just share this today. When I was going through Mckinsey, there was a lady with a baby in a stroller, and the baby was just staring with the mouth basically hanging open at these 3 dogs that were just running wildly through the fenced in area. They were on the outside, the baby and the lady, and it was just the cutest thing you ever saw. So it was dog TV for this little baby. So the field condition, also the tree, that should be part of the evaluation, how our trees are doing within the spaces and around the spaces. And then the surface area around the spaces as well. There's a couple things for sure at Mckinsey that I think could be shifted, but I'm seeing a lot of wear along the edge that has turned into a pathway, and then also at the gate area. So it would be kind of nice to add that into the evaluation, just see how we're holding up. And those are my main inputs. And yes, using a survey would be nice to figure out how we can do that to reach the most people and get their feedback about it. And I think that's it. And I'm wondering, Director Hernandez, do you want volunteers? Is that part of what you're looking for tonight in this discussion?
I would think the 2 other pieces of this discussion that could help set this in motion, and that's great. Thank you for everyone's input on these additional items. But what of the list that I've included and the things that we've done here, I think either the commission can talk about it, or I can bring this back to a future meeting, probably next month, so we can get this underway with an idea of where this commission could actually assist in these things, because you're not going to assist with calling Cody at animal control and asking for their numbers of calls. That's something that staff will do. Talking to PD about incidents and stuff like that. I can probably categorize these things, and the things that we're going to do and the things that the commission can help do, and then some ideas of how to actually get that information. When can we do? I'm interested. The idea of cameras sounds really good to me. I know there's a lot of legal implications, but yeah, with some way to track how many people are out there. Otherwise, it's all anecdotal, just going out there at some random day, random time, the time of year, the weather, all that comes into as variables. So just actuals would be nice to have. So I think I can do that. That would be the second part of the thing that I want answered to move this forward. But I think I could set something up and then run it by this commission at the next meeting. The other one that's more important is I have an idea in my head as a recreation professional of how long this evaluation process will be, because evaluating it for 1 month may not be fair because of the time. Evaluating it for 9 months may be too long. So I just, if I can get some kind of feedback from the commissioners of what is a good timeline. If we start this in November, remember it's winter, we can put some evaluation involved there, which would be great, because we're going to have some foul weather, hopefully, some foul weather that the park users are going to have to deal with. And I think that'd be a good portion to evaluate. But there definitely needs to be a better weather time to evaluate it. Does it go 6 months? Does it go 4 months? Do we not start until after winter? So if I can get just some input from the commission on what their thoughts are.
Great. And I just reminded me that maybe what we ought to do is everybody just kind of pitch in, let's maybe vote on this. The list of 8 items that Director Hernandez has supplied to us. It would be great to get the okay for him that those 8 items are acceptable to everybody. So could we maybe get that as a concrete action right now of whether or not everybody's in agreement that those are good 8 to start with? And you could just raise your hand. So is everybody accepting of the 8 items that are on the list that Director Hernandez has submitted to us? So I'm seeing some nods. Okay, great. Thumbs up. And a question from Commissioner Valadez.
Question about number 8, when you say email submitted comments, is your intention to make those available to us?
Yes. Yes.
And how about to the public? I feel like the way the housing element did it, where all public comments were visible to all public.
Yes, we'll eventually have that. And I believe Director Legge did something like that in previous commission meetings with her workshops for dog parks. I remember seeing that, because it's going to go pages and pages. If we will receive, and we already are receiving email comments, positive and negative, on the dog park. So we're compiling that, and yeah, at some meeting or meetings, we will release that to the public for accessibility. So
when we did the pilot for Hillview, my recollection is that we had our intern Trevor was with us, and he went through the emails, and I think it was sort of a high level report on those. It wasn't actually releasing all the emails. That would probably be a privacy issue, and that comments from the dog parks were all also put into sort of a high level response, and we categorized them because I went through those with him piece by piece. So so when you say email submitted comments, we'll take those into consideration as part of the evaluation, but I don't think we would.
We do actually release them, Chair Morris. It becomes part
even
of
with the emails.
No,
I mean the email.
so they
address,
are
redact them.
Emails
Okay.
are redacted, address numbers are redacted, and phone
Okay.
numbers. And I take care of those and then release all of the comments that are emailed to the commission.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. So I saw a hand go up, but it looks like it's down again. So are we okay with the 8? That's what, we're good with that. So I saw that Commissioner Wenk, Commissioner Corrigan, Commissioner Valadez said they are okay with that. I'm okay with that. Commissioner Daly, are you? And I'm getting a yes from Commissioner Daly. Okay, so we have a solid 8. that we are okay with. So in addition to that, we have some other ideas, and I think it would be helpful if we could give feedback very succinctly about what we think. We've already said what we'd like to have move forward, but as a group, do we want to talk about if we all agree there should be a survey, cameras, that sort of a thing? Would that be helpful, Director Hernandez, if we kind of get down to the nitty-gritty on what the group thinks of this?
No, actually, I think I can probably consolidate with the additions. I have at least 5 additions, and I'll probably reword some of this and maybe even combine some of the 8, but make sure that it's, you know, succinct of the information we need to meet those points. And then I can share that with the commission, and we can get more into the nitty-gritty if necessary.
Okay, great.
Do
All
that.
right, great. So brainstorming is done. So next question is, do people want to help do this?
Yes,
Okay,
big time. I'm
okay.
do a big commitment to this.
Okay, so Commissioner Valdez is on board with volunteering, and I see that co-chair Corrigan has his hand up.
Yes,
And so,
just to say yes as well. I'll
okay,
volunteer.
great. And Commissioner Wang, and Commissioner Daly, I don't want to leave you two out. Are you wanting to raise your hand, or are you okay? You're okay, it looks like. Okay. Sorry, you're fine. Okay, and I'll volunteer as well. I've already been down this road. I know how to do it. You know, happy to do it and pitch in and help again.
Okay, thank you. And once we get a schedule, I'm sure we can fill that schedule on how we can do things. So
Yeah, that sounds good.
the last
All right,
thing,
perfect.
timeline.
And
Are
we can be, oh, I'm sorry, it could be split into weekdays and weekends, mornings and evenings. So when we do the schedule, if you decide you do want to volunteer as a commissioner, that's another idea, is if your time is limited, we can break it down smaller if we need to. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Valdez.
No, that was it. I realized this is, we're basically helping operations do this. We're not, say, forming a park subcommittee, right? We're not doing that. This is
Well,
just volunteering to help, like when we volunteer for family fun days and things like that, right? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. All right. So does that give you everything you need?
I just wanted some input from the commissioners on what they thought a good timeline of
Oh,
evaluation.
right, sorry, timeline. Okay. Anybody have any idea? Commissioner Valadez.
Do you, Director Hernandez, do you have the expectation that there would be rest time in the parks so that the grass can regrow, even if you phase it in areas or in sections? Because that impacts the timeline. When you talked about, oh, let's see some foul weather, I mean, I can tell you already, it's going to turn into a big mud bath if we have rains. If there's no rest time and the turf, thins. But maybe you have something else in your head as to what your vision is that would allow us to run an evaluation period all through the winter, say, for example.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question, because that's something that's been running through my head since we put those fences up, is how we would evaluate it. So just to give everyone my professional opinion on an evaluation like this, is it wouldn't be a continuous period of time. If we decide 12 months, if we decide 6 months, it wouldn't be continuous. We'd hit it during the time of year. Almost, if you, just as an example, if you go over a year period, you would hit it once a quarter. You would evaluate it for several weeks in the fall, in the spring, in the winter, and the summer. That's just an example. So with that, we would definitely want to. Your question is a great one in the sense of the rest period. I have not come to a conclusion on that yet. My experience with dog parks is the users don't like soccer players and soccer teams. They don't like the rest period. They want to play even in that time of year. If it's not raining and it's sunny in December, they want to use that facility, even though the turf can't take it. Now, the expectations, and I can definitely be a guide for the community and through this commission to the community of how the lawns work and how the expectations need to be definitely, how do you say, curbed a little bit, because if we were to give some time off, the reality is we should give it a rest period during the winter, like we do for baseball fields or soccer fields, and we schedule that. However, a 1 month or a 2 month rest period in December and January, we cannot expect the grass to grow. That's just an example, because it just doesn't grow that time of year. So we would need to give it a rest in April and May. That would be ideal. Are we going to be able to keep people out of that park realistically in April and May? So these are all considerations that I'm thinking about right now. But to make a long answer out of your question, for your question is I haven't. It's ideal to give them a rest period, but I don't know. I haven't figured out how we're going to do that yet. The rest period at this point would be during a rainy season, which I think would be easier to do than try to do it during a growing season. And I don't know how we would get really good results for growth at that point.
Well, one of the good things about the warming climate is that the growing season is going to move into, late February and early March pretty quickly. But anyways, I hear what you're saying. With that in mind, I think that we have to at least go through 2 phases, possibly 3, with some rest in between. So if we start in late fall, and then we give some rest, and then we start in, maybe late winter, and then give some more rest, and then possibly summer. I mean, I could see an evaluation period lasting from, say, if you suggested start in November, going through, July or August, in 3 phases or 3 periods with rest in between, small rests.
Okay, great. Anybody else have input on the timeline? So Director Hernandez wants to know how long this pilot program or the evaluation should go.
If that's the input and it's agreed upon, that's something that's exactly the timeline that I was suggesting or would have suggested. But if there's any other suggestions, I can take that into consideration as well outside of that.
That's what I was thinking too. It'd be November to at least July. You've got to see what happens. So if there isn't going to be a rest period every year, in my opinion, we wouldn't do a rest period this time. I mean, rest meaning close down the dog park for a while, and I don't think that'll fly anyway. So, yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Chair Morris, but being a user of both the parks, I would be okay with regions of a given park being shut down for a month or 2 months, if it meant that I was going to get that glass back. And in particular, in Mckinsey, you have the ability to still have off-leash activity on, say, the asphalt. And if we kind of clean up that pit a little bit while the grass is rusting, Hillview doesn't have that benefit. But, I think if users, unless all the users come back to us and say, wow, we do not like grass, we don't want grass, which I really doubt will happen, then I think they will understand that we have to rest the grass. Soccer players, yeah, we hate when you close down the field, but man, we love that field when you open it up. And we know that if you don't close it down, we won't have a good field. So we adapt.
Right.
And the thing about dog parks, you don't have to close it all down.
Great. So with that input, anybody else have any comments they want to make about this timeline for the evaluation? And it looks like none of the other commissioners do. So
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other feedback from us though, Director Hernandez, or are we good now? Did I miss anything?
I don't have any other feedback needed. I'll bring this back to probably next month's commission meeting, just for one more review, and then a review of the timeline, and then probably an official schedule, or proposed schedule, should I say, to fill out for the commissioners' input on covering those things. And yeah, the 2 things, since I'm talking about dog park, let me take this opportunity. Mckinsey, the pit, I'm looking into options to fill that right now. I have gotten input from other cities, particularly Mountain View. The surfacing they use on their dog parks, they're expanding a little bit. But the surfacing that they've been using is almost like a playground, manufactured wood chips. They call it Fibar, to fill that. But the feedback I've been getting are dogs' feet are going into that Fibar type of thing, because that's kind of what's there already. So I'm looking into another surface, so that pit hopefully will be filled in the near future. I'm trying to figure out what to fill that in. It's quite of a long thing. The other thing is the grass that's currently there. We are not trying to kill it off. We're not stopping watering. We did have a watering issue initially at Mckinsey, but we fixed that. And so now it is coming back, much like the grass over here at Hillview that was coming back. But it's a tough balance right now with the unimaginable heat that we had last week. A lot of the grass has browned, but when we put on the grass, because it's getting thinner, because of the dog wear and tear, the grass is getting thinner. So when we do water in the same amounts, it does become mud. There's certain mud areas. So we've had to cut back on the watering. So it's a tough balance we've got with grass. And this is something I'm sure we'll discuss when we talk about surfaces too. So
Great.
thank you.
Okay.
That's all. I appreciate the input.
Thank you. All right, perfect. So with that, we'll close that item and move on to number 3, which is market research. And thank you to the public for being here. And we appreciate that you participate in our meetings as well. So next item on the agenda is market research subcommittee presentation.
Yep, give me 1 second and I'll get that shared
Okay.
for Vice Chair Corrigan. And can you see that on the screen now?
Yes.
Yes. And I think, thank you, Casey. And I think Chair Morris is going to kick off.
Yeah, I'm going to do the first few slides and then we'll pass it over to Vice Chair Corrigan. So welcome everybody to our presentation about market research evaluation. This has been a collaborative effort between Co-Chair Corrigan, myself, and Commissioner Daly. So we're looking forward to sharing this information with you and hearing your input and your questions at the end of the presentation, I think, unless Co-Chair Corrigan has a different idea. Okay, next slide, please. So the agenda that we have is for capturing the statistically valid. Our first piece is having the charter and scope, but we want to talk about this presentation is to give you information about us presenting a way of capturing statistically valid input, and that it's an important aspect of the proposal that we will share with you tonight. But that input only matters if action can be taken on it. So we're looking for being able to have a way of taking action on the input we get. We'll compare the cost of the existing research and proposed approach, and then we'll recap and present a recommendation for Park to decide upon. Next, please. Our goal is to capture the resident input by using a valid research methodology, identify residents' priorities for recreation facilities and programs to help inform the city's actions. And then we want to do this in a cost-effective way and with as little burden on administrative time as possible. And so we want to utilize the commission more with this tool, and have us take on as much of the work as possible in gathering this resident input. Next slide, please. So in order to improve the process, we want to talk about, and we'll talk about how this tool could help improve the system that we have now, where we get a lot of volume. There are people who come to the meetings or send emails or whatever, and they have a very large voice, but it isn't as many people as we would like to get or that we need to get in order to get the feedback that represents our city more accurately. So we want to work with increasing the volume that's quieter and still hearing the volume of people that show up in a very significant way, so that we balance all of that out a little bit. And this is one thing that we think can be done well with the tool that we're presenting today. It'll enable an equitable way of doing this, and it's a proven mechanism, and it's a professional tool. So I think with that, let me just make sure I didn't forget anything. The outcome of the process will provide answers that enable us to determine what the residents want and then how to take action on that. So that's what this tool is all about in our presentation. And so I'll turn it over to Co-Chair Corrigan now.
Oh, thanks, Chair Morrison. And Casey, could you have the next slide, please? So the proposal for capturing statistically valid input, I mean, I should start out by saying the basis for getting the valid input is how you sample the population. So when we get professionally done surveys by Godby, they're sampling through, I think, phone surveys and text surveys to match the demographics of the voter population in Los Altos, and they keep sampling until they get a large enough sampling size for each of these demographic characteristics to be able to extrapolate statistically. The proposal here is that obviously is the gold standard. So we're not saying this is a better than what the market research firms would do. It's an alternate approach that might be more cost effective. So when I talk about citywide input for citywide decisions, the proposal here is let's reach out to the entire population. One approach is to direct mail the entire city, all households in the city, so that you're actually reaching the entire population. Now, when we raised this with the city manager, he did raise the issue that certain segments of the city may not be as responsive, like youths may not respond as much to an outreach like this. We're not, you're not guaranteed to have a statistical match on people responding, in each segment with a direct mail approach, as you would with Godby, who just keeps, sampling and sampling and sampling until they hit their quotas for the right statistical distribution. That said, direct mail would be an approach to, you'd get the results back, you would have sampled properly across the whole population, then you'd find out if you had enough respondents in each group to have a valid statistic to say, yes, this is representative at 95% confidence. The other option is to create a standing survey panel. So this would be effectively taking what they do in the current market research world, like, again, I keep referring to Godby just because that's what I'm familiar with. Well, they sample 600 people and say that's representative of the city. And why not make that a standing panel for, let's say, a year, and keep the identities anonymous, and rotate in a new panel the following year. It's an opt-in approach, but it's just like you're opting into a one-off survey that's done citywide. So that's that part of it. Then the goal obviously is to turn up the volume, to get more respondents in the city, with this methodologies. The neighborhood input is direct mail only. There's no reason for a standing survey panel, because you can cover all the households. We don't know the demographics of any given neighborhood. So it would be more of the whole universe would be sort of homogeneous population. So whatever if you get enough respondents in a neighborhood, you could say that you have a valid result. We mentioned up to 3 respondents per household, because and we'll talk a little bit about how we would, handle that in the next slide. But in this slide, when I took a look at the citywide survey there was an operations survey last March or so that was presented to Park. It was the Godby survey. If you look at the data there, it was 90% of households had 3 or fewer voters in the household. 99% had 4 or fewer voters. So we could decide, but it looks like 3 is a good threshold. 4 is fine too, if the commission feels that's the right way to go. And then in terms of the commercial survey software, I think we want to use something ideally, if it's used, let's say, with an enterprise or has been used in businesses, then it's, it's been, people are making financial bets on the quality of that survey tool. And it's, it's been validated, with large companies, that kind of thing. But it also has, built-in reporting characteristics, usability in terms of, predefined questions that can be used, training modules that are available, consultants who are, experts in the particular technology that are available, that kind of thing. So we think that's an important component, to construct a valid survey. Next slide, Casey. So then just the additional practices. So this is more, the prior slide's about statistical validity. This slide's about kind of how do you make sure you're getting accurate input from people who respond to the surveys, and that you're getting results that you can interpret properly. So the first one would be to develop and test out the survey hypothesis. And one example we would use here is when Chair Morris and I were involved in the Off-Leash Dog Park survey. When we took a look at the survey, one of the hypotheses that seems pretty straightforward is that dog owners and non-dog owners would have a different perspective on off-leash use. But that question was not even in the initial survey. So we added that in midstream to capture that data and see how people view the issue differently. It's kind of important to know that, so you can also, weight the samples differently. So in any event, that's an example of knowing the hypotheses up front would be valuable to make sure you can interpret the findings at the end. The unbiased survey design, this is in terms of both the wording of the questions to make sure we're not, leading the witness, let's say, to a conclusion by how the question's worded, and also in the format, the visual design, let's say in this case of a direct mail. So it's a neutral, like in my experience, I've seen that neutral, in particular with like internet advertising to sell things, neutral designs often work better. Gray background, neutral text, not flashy colors. There's sort of a trust factor built in. And then also the major trust factor would be having like the city logo on a direct mail piece. So if I get a mailer to my home, I don't know, I may just toss it if I don't trust the source. And I think, reinforcing the city logo or the Parks and Recreation logo would kind of give us that trust factor. The third part would be, this is more of making sure the residents know about the issue at hand. So if there are controversial or significant topics that we think might be part of our research, let's try to bulletize one or two of those points in the outreach, in let's say the direct mail piece. That will, that way residents will say, hey, we tried to make everyone aware of this study and what might be, generate more emotion on either side of an issue. And secondarily, you'll probably get a higher response rate. You'll get more participation by virtue of highlighting those topics. So the next one is using pre-assigned respondent codes to confirm residency. This is a question I think that comes up a lot. You're not, it's hard to tell actually. You assume it's basically trust but verify. People respond to these surveys, but how do we verify that that we haven't had multiple of the same person responding to the survey, kind of stuffing the ballot box, and then also that you can actually delineate between residents and non-residents, so clearly, accurately. And then the final item I think would be just pre-testing the survey. The suggestion here is getting at kind of the unbiased survey design. It would be good to pre-test the survey with the commission, get feedback from the people who are most knowledgeable in the issue, which would be staff and the commission. Once that's sort of sanitized, then we could actually pre-test. I mean, you always pre-test market research surveys, but instead of doing that with residents, we could go out to the other commissioners from other commissions. They'll be less familiar with the topic, probably more typical of a resident getting this blind, and then we'll get additional feedback, another layer of feedback to feel comfortable with going live on a mass scale. So that's kind of the overview of survey design and statistical validity. And then I wanted to move into the next part is kind of how do we structure the surveys to get decisions? So thank you, Casey. This question is, now, by the way, this question that I put up on the screen is completely hypothetical. I don't want anyone walking away thinking, oh, this is a survey question we're using, or we're testing these features or anything. This is just an example to illustrate kind of the problem or the challenge we're trying to address. So I know we've all seen these. It's pretty common to do 1 to 5 scale questions. Just the virtue of it being 1 to 5 scale has the limitation that the respondents can all weight things the same way or respond the same way. Everything can be neutral, everything can be important. So you won't get any decision-making capability if people respond the same way to all of the features in front of them or a subset. Another item is that the individuals, we all have our own 1 to 5 scales in our head. So I may be a hard grader and the most I'll ever give out is a 4 out of 5, and other people are easier graders and give out 5 out of 5. So how are you, when you mix all these scoring models in people's heads together, what's the output that you're getting that you can rely on? And then the final item, this is probably an overstatement, but in terms of, if you look at the left-hand column, I'm trying to illustrate that you can't mix and match features that are mutually exclusive. And it's interesting, like Commissioner Valadez talked about the foundation, you know, of the dog park. And yeah, like the foundation is very distinct, gravel foundation, artificial turf versus, you know, the amenities that go into the fenced-in dog park. So you kind of want to be able to find out what's more important, foundation or amenities, and then within those, what's the most important thing within those categories. So don't go, you don't need to go there next, Casey, but I was going to mention, just as a preface to the next slide, I've had background with this technique that I was introduced to in business school by the person who actually created the research technique, this conjoint analysis that we're going to be talking about. And it kind of got my imagination. I brought that out into, you know, I used that in a business purpose. In fact, I used a version of this software tool we'll be discussing in a company. And I can't go into the specifics, but I can say that we uncovered we had been segmenting the market in a way into different subgroups of businesses. This uncovered a whole new way to stratify these businesses. So we found out a different grouping of businesses, and each grouping of businesses had their own product bundle that they liked. There were, you know, distinct bundles for each grouping of businesses. So it was sort of an eye-opener. We took that research, then we used it and changed our go-to-market strategy, and had a really significant, you know, increase in revenue at the company. That was with this tool. Then, and by the way, regarding the tool itself, I have no relationship or anything with this company other than I used it once and had really good experience with it. The other example I have is using the same sort of technique I'll talk about next. There was a company that I worked with that it was a major consumer company. They were looking to launch a commodity service in an industry. There were incumbents that offered the same service. So it was pretty much interchangeable commodity services. And they wanted to find out what's the value of their brand versus the incumbent's brand. They did a conjoint analysis study, and the results were their brand had no uplift. So they would have wasted a lot of money going to market, assuming their brand meant something. And so they abandoned that. So I just wanted to set some context. That's a lot of context, but that's why I've seen this work in practice. I think we could apply it. We can go to the next slide, Casey. I think we could apply it. This particular approach is good for something that's a kind of a product, a collection of categories of things like a dog park. Again, Commissioner Valadez, you had distinct categories of things that were sort of mutually exclusive, I think. Foundation, I forget, you had features, programs, that's a perfect example, actually, what I was trying to get at. How would we measure the value of those categories? And so on the left-hand side of the screen, you know, the two categories are foundation, and I just made it features to keep it simple here. And stepping back, so the person taking this conjoint survey, they're first asked about all of the subset of features on the screen. And ironically, they do kind of a 1 to 5 ranking on those. And that helps inform presenting the respondent. After they go through that little ranking exercise, then they're presented with this screen. This screen is 1 of 5 screens that they would be presented to make their decisions. This is screen 1 and 4 more screens. So you can see here, the person's going to have to choose one of these 3 options, from left to right. And after they make that selection, the next screen they'll see is a harder combination to choose from. Things they like more, and they have to choose among even more attractive options. So you iterate and iterate until your last screen is like, okay, that's the ideal combination for a given respondent. And then everything's rolled up across all the users. So you get the ideal product for the entire population you're surveying. And then you can also, understand which segments, which groups, if you have enough respondents, people of a certain age demographic prefer this product, for instance. That's kind of the goal of this. And then we can go to the next slide. So for example, I didn't have good graphics. I was trying to play with the tool, but I'm limited to this tool to only having 10 sample responses. So I just took something from a website out there. The example is on the left-hand side, it's a design of a mobile phone study. So the left-hand column shows you these categories of things: brand, price, operating system, that are they're part and parcel of a mobile phone. That's part of a product. And then you have options in those 3 columns: Apple, Sony, Nokia, for the brands. So you can imagine that people went through the same process as the prior screen. They were given combinations of features and price and brand. They went through the whole process, and at the end, you arrive at the middle chart. So the middle chart, the gray bar, the column there, the cell phone in the middle, is the ideal product from that respondent population. But you can see the pie chart above that. It just says that ideal product, let's say that was with the purple part of the pie chart, the largest part. So let's say that's 40% of people's preference. It would get 40% market share if they went live with that. And that's simplifying things because it's share of preference. It's not actually market share, because market share is a factor of advertising distribution. It's not just the product. But in any event, that gives you an idea. You get the ideal product from people. In this case, you can imagine with Commissioner Valadez, we'd have a result with the Hillview design. We'd be able to find out what feature from each category mattered the most. What's the ideal product. And then on the far right, using this technique, you can also compare the categories to one another. I'm blocked out a little on the screen, but I think there's a red bar that's on the highest bar. It looks like I think it's 2 or 3 times greater than the second place qualifier. So you're finding out that top column, that's the most important category for the users. So that's the kind of result, and it's twice as important as the next category. So you understand sort of what's driving the purchase decision or the choice of the bundle. You find out which categories are driving these decisions. So that's why I think that the bottom line of this whole discussion is you get better decision-making results when you force people to make choices in a survey, as opposed to just doing 1 to 5 lists. They have to make trade-offs like you do in the real world. You look at products on a shelf and you choose one or the other, So by the way, for anyone watching this, you can click on the links at the bottom right. Those 2. One, how it works video is kind of an overview of the whole technique. And then the right side is a live version of a study that's available at this company, Soft2 Software. So you can see, you can go through the choices, sequentially, and then see the output of the work as well, the survey results. Next slide. So the subcommittee, we looked at, well, how would we apply the prior slides? What would we have done differently with some of our prior research? Frankly, the 2020 dog park workshops were really well done in our opinion. So, in terms of like direct mail, well, the staff distributed distributed direct mail to I believe it was the McKinsey neighborhoods and the McKinsey and Lincoln neighborhoods. And, you know, within 1,000 feet of the target park. So like I had mentioned earlier, you're sampling the whole universe, the entire population was approached. And then they got people to attend workshops in person. I think the only thing that might have been more an improvement there was to make an online survey available, some sort of equivalent survey, so that you didn't have to attend the workshop to weigh in. You know, they would have had a higher response or population to respond. And then in terms of the last year's off-leash pilot survey, as I mentioned earlier, you know, just in making sure we had the hypotheses up front to capture that basic data about dog owner, non-dog owner is one example. Broaden outreach. I think we had maybe 100, 110 responses. And, you know, that was for, you know, it wasn't distributed broadly. It's whoever kind of had heard about the survey. So, you know, it wasn't a proactive outreach. It was sort of relying on people to take the initiative to take the survey. Validating resident respondents. There was no way to really verify residency in that survey, even though, but the question was asked, which was good. And finally, midway through the survey, we asked one forced choice question to make people do a trade-off. So, but, you know, we could have gotten clean answers, you know, if we had constructed the survey more rigorously, I would say. Then next slide. But there are challenges to this approach. In fact, this is probably the biggest challenge with this online survey approach is we don't know, are we going to be limiting the population of respondents of people who are either not computer savvy or don't have computer access to take this survey? Because this kind of survey we're talking about is interactive. You couldn't do a paper version. It's iterative. Each screen feeds the next screen. So, and if we find out that, you know, a good portion of the population needs in-person help, we have the facilities to do it at the community center or the library. But let's say we reach out to 1,000 households and 500, you know, need to take the survey in person. That's a shortcoming of the survey. We'd have to have a lot of staff involved to oversee that.
Well,
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying that's a risk.
in Co-Chair Corrigan, one of the things that we talked about, just to jump in for half a second on here, is that we would supply times and volunteers to be able to accommodate people who need help with a survey that is online. So we'd make that available. And the one thing we didn't say is we did present this information to our new city manager and also to Director Hernandez, and they understood this and said that they have the ability to, we do have the ability to do this. We do own equipment that we can help people take surveys with. So it wouldn't actually be much of a stumbling block, provided we can get our volunteers in place. So I just wanted to add that in. Thanks.
Thanks for that clarification. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Casey. So then this slide is looking at the citywide survey discussed earlier. Breaking the far left side of the table talks about the major cost components, which vary by type of survey approach. So the panel creation would be one, survey software itself. In this case, this is referencing Sawtooth Software's published price, and then the survey distribution or administration. The second column from the left is the current approach, and my understanding, it's in the range of $25,000 to do a citywide survey, but there's no other cost. Obviously, it's all run by the consultant. The middle approach is is where again a consultant would ideally be involved in creating the statistically valid panel. If we were to go that route, still have to pay for the survey software, so you could be sending the survey online to the panel directly, and then there's that annual cost of $4,500, and there's no real administration cost because it's not direct mail. It's just somebody has to interpret the survey results. And then the far right is where we would do a citywide direct mail campaign for each survey. No panel involved. Survey software remains in place to do it online. And then the kind of cost I got from a vendor that the city works with is it would come out to about $5,000 per survey to do a citywide survey using this. So 5,000 plus 4,500 per year for the software tool. So if you, the next slide, Casey, if you put these all in one chart, and first of all, so the blue line is our existing world, what we do with consultant surveys, 25,000 per survey. But to be fair to that, I think if the city, let's say, were to work with the consultant, say we're going to do 20 surveys this year, I'm sure there'd be some sort of volume discount. So this is probably overstating the total cost. Nevertheless, if you look at the direct mail cost for 20 surveys, the far left column is the annual cost of doing these surveys. The x-axis is how many surveys in a given year. So you can see that if you do 20 surveys, direct mail to all households, that's $100,000 at the end of the end of the year. The panel turns out to be the most cost effective because you're just doing the one-time kind of panel creation. And from there, there's no incremental cost to access that panel. So that's the citywide approach, just to give you a sense of ballpark cost. And then we can move on to the neighborhood approach. So for these neighborhood surveys, the star on the graph just means, this is assuming that the survey cost has already been accounted for, the survey tool cost, the 4,500 per year for, let's say, Sawtooth software, if that were the company. But other than that, the same cost components, survey distribution, survey administration. The existing approach, actually, there isn't any cost, right? Because we're not doing this proactive outreach. We're putting a survey up on the city website and get the word out through our normal information channels, and then whoever responds. If we do direct mail, the cost would be, $1,220 per direct mail to 1,000 households. Again, this is from the the city vendor that we've worked with. And that includes a $500. If we were to design each mailer differently each time, it would be $500. So if you use kind of the same design, it would take the cost down even lower. It'd probably, it'd be in the $720 range if you didn't keep redesigning the direct mail piece. So next slide, I think. So just recapping, thank you, Casey. Oh, sorry, back up one, thanks. So kind of recapping what was presented, our objective was to get statistically valid resident input if possible. So the methodology we're proposing is statistically valid in terms of sampling the entire population. The response rate will determine if the results are actually valid for any given segment of the population. So if you distribute to 1,000 households and you get 25 responses, that's not a valid, statistically valid outcome. We talk about consistency. We're talking about consistency in terms of applying a city branding to the outreach, and then also having an unbiased survey design, so we get the best quality responses. And then the other big objective is what Chair Morris mentioned at the outset, to increase the voices that are heard above and beyond what we're hearing today from our residents directly. The second item is, again, once we get all that feedback, we're proposing a solution to be able to identify residents' priorities, their most valued feature, well, their most valued categories of items, and the features within those. And one thing I'll mention, which I hadn't mentioned earlier, but this conjoint approach I showed earlier was for products where you have a product that has multiple categories and levels within those categories. There is another technique that's offered. If you just have a list of 15 items that are all part of the same category, 15 pieces of playground equipment, there's a different technique to use to trade off just that list of things. So it's the same philosophy, but it's a different methodology. I'll just leave it at that. And that's called max diff, is what the is being used. In terms of, you know, equitable, yes, we would argue that it's equitable because we're reaching out to everyone in the community, you know, in the target population uniformly. Everyone has the same opportunity to respond. And then the fact that we're doing it, having the option of in-person support for people who don't have internet access or a computer, as well as, you know, online support for those who do. And then cost effectiveness, I think we demonstrated that with the chart you saw. Ideally, we'll save staff time. You know, the commission will take as much burden as staff wants us to, but we're going to be working very closely with staff because staff is the subject matter expert, along with the consultants they bring in, you know, on a particular topic. And then ease of use. Having used the tool, it is relatively easy to use, but that would be part of the pilot, is to see, does everyone agree that the tool is easy to use from an administrative point of view? And just as importantly, do our respondents think it's easy to use? One of the questions in the pilot is, do people get fatigued by a series of choices that they need to make in this tool? You know, hopefully we'll learn that kind of thing if we are to do a pilot, which leads to the final slide, which is, if you could present that, Casey. So what we were hoping to do, we can get a free trial of this software. So we were hoping to just run some sort of study with, you know, staff involvement and commission involvement to deploy this tool in a neighborhood survey. We're not going to touch the citywide survey. The neighborhood survey is what we're proposing. It could be, you know, it could be Hillview. It could be, what's the future design of Hillview? Or it could be something else. But we would like to do this because we'd like to learn a lot about this tool and, you know, response rates, and do most people have online access from this pilot, or, you know, do we need to staff more for on-site support, that kind of thing. We have a lot of learnings are needed from this. So that's what I had. Thank you. Any questions? And I guess we'll just open it up.
I think Commissioner Valadez has a question. I'm not sure, but it looked like your hand was up.
Point, Chair Morris, do you want us to like go around, ask one question, and then, because I have.
It would be best if everybody had one question chance first, and then if nobody has questions, and we'll go on and take seconds. So would you like to start with your question?
Sure. It's a question, but it's also going to end up being a suggestion. The question is this: you just right on the very last thing you said, let's do a test pilot, and you mentioned, you know, maybe let's look at the Hillview site. Given that it is a test pilot, given that your population would be small, and also given that it is a hot topic, you know, it is a current topic, do you think that there's some jeopardy in using a current topic for your test pilot, such that that data or those results, because there might be some problem with the pilot or learning that hasn't quite been done, and suddenly it now pre-biases us to assessing the results of the test pilot and now transposing it to a future pilot, and somehow we're muddling the purity of the analysis when we do the real thing?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, if you want me to respond, Chair Morris or Commissioner.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I would.
I think it's a really great point. The question, like yeah, it's sort of like when you roll something out to market, do you go big first, or, you know, do you choose a less controversial area to kick the tire? So I hadn't thought about that, and I think that's a really good question to raise, because we don't want to, you know, we want to make sure we have good, accurate, you know, results, and we worked out the kinks when we hit a controversial area.
Yeah, so the one way to avoid controversy is kind of what I implied, which is don't take the hot topic, do something else. But then the other way is take an important topic, but pick one that is far enough out, say in your budget cycle or in your vision planning, whatever, so that the residents can, or your population, if it's in business, can understand that it is a test, that this is not going to turn into an expenditure, in this budget cycle. So those are two ways to avoid what I call this pre-biasing that can happen as you're learning. Pre-biasing things as you're learning, it's a bad downside to analysis. Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect, thanks. Any other questions? Not looking like it is. I do feel like we need to do a full disclosure before I forget. As I said earlier, we did meet with City Manager England, and we did meet with Director Hernandez regarding this. And the reception was very warm about it, and the interest is there. So I think the feedback that we get from you would be really helpful. And again, we're asking, is it okay if we give this a try? And we would work with the staff to come up with what we would do as our first run if the commission agrees that this is a good idea. So, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew we were asked to share this with the city manager. So we did. Oh, and we've also shared it with the public information officer team, not Sonia, she wasn't available, but with Gina, and I think it's Nora were the two that we met with. So we have met with staff regarding this a little bit. So anyway, sorry, I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions. Commissioner Wang, do you have any questions?
Any questions, but
Or comments?
Yeah, I mean, my comment is just that, I think it's a great idea to try a new way of, getting input. I mean, I really agree with the premise, which is, there's very loud voices, but not, many. And, we need to find a way to better sort of capture, what the sentiment is of a larger percentage of the population. I don't know if this particular tool or style of research is the right one, that'll meet all the needs that we have, but, I totally supportive of trying it. And if it works, it's fantastic. So, I fully support, trying it.
Thank you. I just want to clarify something with Casey before we go on. Are we only supposed to be taking questions at this point and then going to public comment? I'm so sorry. So I apologize for the mistake. So just as I said the questions, I realized I made that mistake. So are there any further questions that anybody has? Commissioner Valadez.
I have one more, and it has to do in terms of your analysis, the statistical validity. And they're a little bit the two factors are a little bit interrelated. The concept of small sample testing, and I'll use your phraseology, neighborhood testing. And then the issue of competency, which wasn't competency of your population, given the particular topic you're surveying about, which wasn't mentioned anywhere in your presentation. What I mean, do you know what I mean when I'm talking about competency of the survey population, or should I explain it?
But make sure you're asking a question.
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, I hear the first part of the question is to clarify whether we understand. So sorry, Co-Chair Corrigan, I'll let you go with the answer.
Well, I should probably, I think I know what you're getting at, but I'd rather just let you explain the question.
So my question, if I just describe competency of the survey population as depending on a topic, and you go out and do a survey, the competency of your population people will have opinions based on what they know. But if a competency level is high for the given thing you're trying to survey, and they don't have that competency level, your results will be corrupted. You may not come out with a good suggestion. So, I can give two quick examples. If you're asking the population about how they use play structures, what kind of play structures they like to use in the park. And you come up with your scenario-based conjoint analysis options for them. Probably most people with kids or that have ever played on a playground can give you good opinions. But if you're asking them to talk about the productivity and feasibility of certain climate action programs, they may not have any competency, and they're going to come from a level where they do understand. Maybe it's their pocketbook and that's about it. So that has a strong, my question to you is this, do you think, and does the software, as far as you've looked, address that issue in determining your survey population?
I would say in determining the survey population, the two ways I would address it would be the background questions that are asked. There's an introductory section where you'd ask questions about the person's background or experience. And the other would be, I'm pretty sure there's an ability to include, you could have a web page, you could link to a web page that has, let's say, some high level material, you could have additional information that's available to the respondent to review. But in terms, I don't think your point's well taken. Obviously, that's a risk in any survey, I guess, is how knowledgeable is the respondent and how do you get everyone up to speed on the issue at hand. But it would have the capability to provide educational materials, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So where neighborhoods come in, because I mentioned neighborhoods, is a lot of times, for example, if you're going to survey about dog parks and you only ask, like in the earliest pilot that you mentioned, you guys talked to residents near Lincoln and you talked to residents near Mckinsey. That is, and given that the resource, i.e. the dog parks, are going to be so rare in the city, the understanding would be that all residents might use a dog park. But if you only focus your queries to the residents near the particular dog parks you're targeting, do you think that biases the data in any way? Does that really represent a representative? Does it really give you representative results from the survey?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'd want to use the household information where we could, because the dog park workshops that were done had kind of a geographic bent to it, where you could find people closer or farther away to the park. There was a distinct change, to your point. There was a specific sort of gradation of responses the further you got away from the park. I think it was more receptive, as I recall. But in any event, I think that would be the kind of segmentation we would do at the end of the survey. How did people within 1,000 feet respond versus those who weren't within 1,000 feet? I agree. I think that's something you definitely want to tease out of the results.
Okay, thank you.
Guessing that those are the only questions, but just to double back, because I don't think Commissioner Daly has questions. He worked with us on this. So I believe that it's time to go to public comment.
That's correct.
Okay, if we have any.
We do have a couple members of the public on, so if there are any comments on this agenda item, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. I don't think there are any comments on this item.
Great.
You can proceed.
Okay, then we'll go on with discussion of this topic, and understand that Commissioner Wang already supplied some of the discussion for us. And I'm wondering, Commissioner Wang, if you have anything else you want to add to what you said.
No, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I think it's a good idea. And if the question on the table is to try it, then I think it's for me, it's an easy answer. Yes, why not try it? There's no harm.
Great, okay. Any other commissioners that want to discuss anything? Commissioner Valadez, do you have anything?
I support it. I personally love scenario-based surveys. You know, you can put some intelligence into them. You can put some budget constraints into them. In other words, you only present scenarios that are somewhat feasible. You do some stretch scenarios, some conservative scenarios, but forcing people to choose amongst reasonable situations, I think is the best way to do surveys. Just having people rank features, it never really works. I love it.
Good. Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments, Commissioner Daly, do you have any comments to add? Okay, then we need a motion in a second. If anybody wants to take a stab at making a motion. Commissioner Corrigan. Oops, you're muted.
Am I allowed to move for
Yes,
our own subcommittee's proposal? Okay.
you absolutely are.
Great.
I would like to move that the Parks and Rec Commission approves a pilot of the market research methodology and tool presented today.
Does anybody want to second that? Commissioner Daly?
I don't want to second.
No,
that
I don't think so.
as it
I've seen
stands.
your expression, so I'm
Yeah.
thinking you wanting to make a
I think
comment.
we might want to think about the wording, because I don't know that our body can approve a pilot. I don't know our body can approve anything whatsoever. We're a advisory body. So perhaps if the wording were changed to recommend a pilot, then I think it would be fine.
Yeah,
A friendly amendment. Are you okay with that, Vice Chair Corrigan?
I am. And actually, I don't know if I can, I just realized I should have been more specific that it's a neighborhood pilot too. I did, to Commissioner Daly's point of view, recommend that we complete a neighborhood or we
A
pursue
neighborhood
neighborhood
pilot.
Okay, Commissioner Wang.
Can I second that?
I know I'm the chair, but I'm wondering, I have one concern about the way that it has been worded.
Sure.
We left out work with staff. Do we need to include that? Is that something that is important to have in there?
Yeah, I'm completely, yeah, I think it certainly doesn't, I don't see how it hurts because we are going to be working directly with staff unless anyone has an objection to that.
Okay, Director Hernandez, happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Chair Morris. Yeah, what you could do is just change the wording, almost just tweak it slightly and just say, recommend to staff to put forward a pilot. That's all it would say. So once you recommend to us, as we've already discussed with the city manager, then we will utilize anything that you've recommended to us already. So, and that would include working with you. So
that'd be great. I don't know if Casey, could you?
I do think I have it. Commissioner Corrigan moved that the Parks and Recreation Commission work with staff to approve or to move forward a neighborhood pilot of the market research methodology and tools presented today. And I will put by and have your subcommittee's full name.
That sounds right to me.
That sounds good to me.
I'm more comfortable with that.
Casey, could you read that back one more time instead of? Yeah, read that back one more time. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure it's worded correctly.
Okay, the Commissioner Vice Chair Corrigan, because I actually just use initials. Sorry. So it says JC, but Vice Chair Corrigan moved that the Parks and Recreation Commission recommend to staff to put forward a neighborhood pilot of the market research methodology and tools presented today by the Market Research Subcommittee.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if that is approved that way, I have a second by Commissioner Wang.
Yeah, I approve that version. Thank you, Casey, very much for pulling that all together.
Okay.
Commissioner Wang, are you comfortable with that change, that wording?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a first and we have a second.
If there's no more discussion, we can have a vote now.
Great.
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh. Commissioner
Commissioner,
Valadez.
and I thought in your presentation, you said that the first attempt would go out amongst commissions. Are you actually proposing a public neighborhood test pilot?
Yes.
Okay.
The pre-test would be with the, the park and other commissions to finalize the survey wording and design. Yeah.
Okay. But you don't have a topic yet?
No.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I think we're ready to do a vote.
Okay. Chair Morris,
Yes.
Vice Chair Corrigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Valadez,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
and Commissioner Daly.
No.
That does pass 4-1.
Okay. I'm hesitating just because I was surprised Commissioner Daly didn't vote for it, but okay, it passed. I mean, what's the protocol? Can we have a discussion about it or no? No, okay, fine. Okay, it passed. Thank you. All right, so that's it for the items for consideration and action. So moving on, we'll go to informational items. And the first is an update on the racquetball, the racket sport. Not racquetball. I'm not bringing up racquetball. You're muted. Director Hernandez is the one who will be presenting us this update.
Thank you, Chair Morris. And yes, racquetball is a great sport, though. I used to love it. I used to play it a lot. But in any case, yes, just to give a brief update on the racket sports, particularly tennis and pickleball that are hopefully coming into the city very shortly. Just to give an update, we still have the same plan for installation of pickleball courts at the tennis court locations of Mckinsey and Montclair parks. The Mckinsey tennis courts adjacent to the dog park will be the first site that will be painted. And I think there was an update on this already, but I do want to update the commission and the public that has not been done yet. There's been some unforeseen delays in getting the striping down. And now we, the city manager and myself just met with a pickleball group recently just to discuss going forward and the plan, which once again, I'll reiterate, remains the same. It's just we are going to go ahead and start with Mckinsey first, and then we will move to Montclair after we get some data on the sound and the sound mitigation techniques that we'll be implementing at Mckinsey for that pickleball. So the 6 courts that are proposed for Mckinsey Park that will be going in, that's needs to be rescheduled due to some unforeseen circumstances. And then also that will be happening as soon as we can get more word on the delivery of the sound mitigation panels. So staff has ordered those panels and we're still waiting for a date to come in on the delivery of those. And some of that also has to do with getting them their payment first. But yeah, once we get that, then we'll get a delivery date. And we have talked to them though, and we don't think it's going to be a long lead time, maybe a couple of weeks at the most. But then we'll install those once they come in, and kind of trying to coincide the painting of the 6 courts at Mckinsey close to or with the installation of the sound panels. So once we get those, once we get those installed at Mckinsey, the courts and the panels, we'll be able to take some readings on the sound before we move forward with the 4 courts that are planned at Montclair at this point. So we'll take that into consideration when deciding when or if those go in at Montclair. So that's an update. I will give more information, hopefully on how pickleball is going at the next commission meeting. But for now, that's the update.
Great, thank you. And the other information item is also yours, Director Hernandez. I believe it's the movie night in October.
Sure, I can give an update on that one. I believe it's October 22nd. Am I right on that one, Casey? I didn't have that in front of me. I didn't prepare
It
that.
is.
So October 22nd, that evening, once it gets dark, we'll start the movie out at Grant Park. We're going to resume our movie nights that we did pre-pandemic. So that should be fun. And wanted to announce the movie if we haven't heard. And we had to move forward with selecting the movie in normal circumstances. We would have brought it to the commission to kind of go over the short list of movie selections. But that movie will be Monsters, Inc. That will be playing that evening. We're gonna go with one movie to start with. That's a really good middle range movie, good humor for the older kids and adults, as well as it still is an animated movie. So what we're looking for, what the Parks and Rec Department is looking for, is some commissioners. We usually had commissioners come out to do what we call a booth or a table, and possibly doing some crafts with any kids that are in attendance, that just do a quick, simple craft, and our Parks and Rec staff can help develop that, make it real easy for instruction for the commissioners that help. But this is a free event, so we're looking for volunteers from the commission. Just need a handful of them, possibly 4 people to commit to breaking up into shifts. And what I can do is send out a schedule of when commissioners can show up to assist in that table, and possibly even help assist with setup too. It takes a couple of people to set up the screen and the sound system and stuff. I do intend to be there personally on this, as well as probably some of my other full-time staff as well. So for those interested, they can reach out to me. But like I was saying, I could probably put together a schedule for that evening, and I can email it around to the commissioners to sign up for those work hours. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that, so they're understanding that it usually runs somewhere. Volunteer hours would be between 5 and 10 o'clock in the evening, so probably closer to the 6 o'clock range when it starts getting dark, so we can set up in the light. And then we obviously have to break down in the evening, and the grass is kind of dewy at times, but we'll roll up things, fold up the tables, and that'll be the evening. So it's somewhere around a 4-hour shift or a 2-hour shift in groups of 2s. So I could send that around, but I wanted to put it on all the commissioners' radar for now.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll add, it's super fun. I really enjoyed it. And sorry that I will not be here this year for it. So I'm hoping other commissioners are able to step up to the plate and show up and enjoy it, and have your families or friends join you for that fun movie. Okay, so with that, we move on to, unless anybody had any questions, no, never mind. We move on to the commission and subcommittee. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Daly, yes, your hand is up.
Sorry, I see from our list of participants, some of the people that had commented in the past, particularly about pickleball, and I didn't know if we were taking any public comments on these information items, and I just wanted to check on that since I see names that I recognize.
Thank you. And it's my understanding we don't take comments on informational items, but I think we sometimes change that. So Casey?
We generally do not. At our last meeting, or perhaps it was 2 meetings ago, we were directed by the city clerk's office and by Gabe to take public comment on pickleball, which was an informational item, because there were so many written comments on that same topic. So if there is someone, or if Manny would like us to take public comment, we certainly can.
So yes, what I can say to it is any item, just for reference for the commissions, any item that's on the agenda, we can take public comment on.
Okay.
It's any item. We usually don't receive public comment for updates, but if there is, please raise
There
your
is
hand.
a hand raised. So I think that Dorit would probably like to speak to the racket sports item, which was number 4.
Great, we can give her 3 minutes, please.
Okay, Dorit, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I am unmuted. Are you
Great.
hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may go ahead and begin.
Hi. So Manny, my question is really about scheduling the opening day. It's kind of frustrating to hear delay after delay. So you say that the soundproofing has been ordered, but the delivery date cannot be communicated because the city hasn't paid them yet. So they won't communicate to us a delivery date, and you're anticipating a couple of weeks out to delivery. I mean, as a homeowner, if a vendor behaved this way to me, I would be highly frustrated. And certainly after
Excuse
so
me,
many,
I'm sorry, Chair
Excuse me,
Morris.
Dorit, just one moment, please. I'm sorry, Commissioner
We're
Daly.
we're not able to take questions, right?
No,
Public
that's
comment is
exactly
public
right.
comment.
I'll
so-
take care of it. No questions, but Dorit, continue with your comment.
okay, just to share the general frustration of delay after delay after delay, and hoping to get a really kind of forceful and aggressive and proactive engagement with the vendor so that we get a delivery date and we make the payment as per the terms. So just looking for something better than a couple of weeks, because as everyone on the commission knows, we had scheduled the opening date May 18th. So now we're really far away from that, and just kind of delay after delay after delay.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Dorit. We appreciate that you are here and that you made the comment. Thank you. We can't comment on it or answer your questions at this point. Thank you. But do any commission, I don't think we can even go to commissioners have any questions now. Okay, so thank you. Okay, so next is Commissioner Subcommittee reports. Anybody have any reports that they want to put forward for their subcommittee? I know Commissioner Valadez and I do. Does anybody else have anything regarding their subcommittees? It's not looking like it. And we had one subcommittee report today. So, okay. So Commissioner Valadez, do you want to do a brief rundown of the pop-up?
Sure, real quick.
Thank you.
Chair Morris and I have been talking in an ongoing fashion. We've decided that our initial pop-up, we're shooting for October 15th. We have to find out from staff if that's okay. We've got a backup date, 2 backup dates in October and November. One in October, one in November. We've done some test ordering. The pop-up is going to be to have kids and adults, probably 5 years and up, doesn't work for babies or toddlers or pre-K, to paint compression sleeves for your arms, because all the kids and all the adults wear those to play and work out and just to look cool, to do faux tattoos or to protect from the sun. There are lots of reasons kids and adults wear sleeves. So we have found a good source of cheap sleeves. We're running some tests right now. We'll be running tests on washability, paintability, and how to make the process feasible in a park setting. It'll be outdoors, assuming that we can get it done in one of the dates we're going to propose with staff. And we really look forward to doing this fun pop-up in a park.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no other updates regarding subcommittees, I think our next is any reports from staff. Are there any additional reports that staff has for us? And Director Hernandez?
Yes, thank you, Chair Morris. The only thing I want to make note of are the attachments that I included in the packet. Thank you, Casey, for posting that. These are just informational items that we can look at. We've got 3 items that we wanted to post. One of them is the Teen Center Open House that will be this month on the 23rd from 3 to 6 p.m. The other item is the Family Days. And that's an updated item for the Family Days that our department is doing in October, November, and December. And there's more details on that. Let's see, on the flyer itself. So it is a free program. So we're anxious for people. They've been very successful events. The last two that we've had have pulled in the hundreds of people. So over that time. And then just a brief announcement on the job vacancies. And I can attest to Parks and Recreation is a very exciting and challenging field to work in, and it can be very rewarding though. So hopefully the youth out there can hear that, and we'll find an opportunity to get through many of our programs, CITs, and our part-time, which is announcements that are available right now, and then eventually our full-time programs, and make a career out of Parks and Recreation. I may sound like a commercial, but it's a lot of fun especially when you started early. So thank you. That's the only announcements from staff.
To add on to that commercial, I actually fell into a Parks and Recreation job. It was part-time, and I did not mean for it to be anything more than a few months. And then Manny hooked me in.
That's
Mhm.
great. Yep, and after attending past Director Legge's retirement and watching her video that was made for her, it's clear that it's a really nice career path for people to take. So, yep, thank you for letting us know about the job openings. Okay, so that brings us to future agenda items. I know we're at 9 o'clock just past, and often if our meeting were going longer, we'd stop, take a break, but I'm gonna keep pushing through. I hope that's okay, because we're just about done. And
I have
Casey?
4 already
Okay.
listed. I
Okay.
have the new Hillview Dog Park conceptual design process, and that is slated to be presented in October. I have the playground music features slated to be presented in January. And I have the park in lieu funds presentation, and that's a to be determined date. Of course, it depends on our other departments. And then we added earlier the dog park evaluation pieces that Manny is going to put together and present next month. So also in October.
Great, thank you. And do any of the commissioners have anything they want to add to future agenda items?
Yeah, will,
Commissioner Valadez?
Vice Chair Corrigan, will you have any progress on the test pilot thing? The survey pilot, or not?
It's a good point. We should definitely agendize that. I don't know the timing at all yet.
We can leave it as to be determined. They do not
Yeah.
have to have a slated date.
Yes, thank you for suggesting that, Commissioner Valadez. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, I don't see anybody else who has anything to add to the future agenda items. So with that, I think our meeting is over. It is 9:02 p.m. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for all the great work and the information, and we'll see you next month. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Right.